Okay, we got an opponent, Nick Chen from Canada, 1500. Okay, so this is our first 1500. We are once again playing the basics, the classics. Ooh, King's Gambit. Okay, this is nice because I can teach you guys. I can not teach you. I can remind you of my King's Gambit system. This is an incredibly rare move, and it scores incredibly well. And those of you who've been on my stream for a long time, you might remember what this move is. I taught it to John Davis. The Joker, the Jake EX got it. You deserve a sub. C6. What the hell are we doing? This looks like the worst move in the position, and this is exactly the point. C6 is like the Caro-Kann against the King's Gambit. Now, if you think about why you even play C6 in the Caro-Kann, well, you do that in order to prepare D5, and that's the whole point. We wait for knight F3, and then we strike with D5, and hopefully you can start to see the point. If E takes D5, we can push E4, and that's why we waited for the knight to come to F3. Now, the actual objective evaluation of C6, black is slightly worse, but only if white knows exactly how to play. And most of the time, I end up getting better positions with the black pieces. All right, so what should we do now? Should we take on E4 in this position? Should we take on E4? What do you guys think? And don't say no just because I'm asking the question. I know you're used to answering no to, that question, but the answer is yes. Of course we should, because after D takes E4, D takes E4, we can trade queens and force the king onto D1, which is an incredibly undesirable square. The answer is yes. We should take on D4, on E4. Now, it's possible that he'll take on E5 with the knight. That's probably the best move. If D takes E4 happens, that endgame is better for us. That king on D1 is going to be really vulnerable, even though there are no queens on the board. Yeah, knight E5 is good. Knight E5 is good. All right, so now, of course, F6 is impossible because of queen H5 check. That's an important thing to note. We also shouldn't rush to take on D3 and help white develop. So we should try to trade on our own terms. And we should do that while developing our pieces. And so what move am I sort of implying? Well, I'm implying the move knight F6. Yeah, developing, and if he wants to take on E4, be my guest. We'll trade queens and then recapture with the knight. You might say, well, aren't we worried about the knight being on E5? The knight on E5 is annoying, but what is it actually doing? Is it really attacking anything? Not really. All right, we'll deal with the knight later. We'll go knight BD7 at some point. Okay, knight C3. Now we have several options for how we can play. We can take on D3 here and then follow it up with the move bishop C5. Why is that good? Because that prevents white from castling and it keeps the king in the center. We would love to go bishop C5 immediately, but we can't because that gives up a pawn. Now, the other approach here is to play bishop B4, developing the bishop and pinning the knight and taking the sting out of D takes E4. I think both options are interesting. E takes D3 is the more concrete approach to the position. Bishop B4 is the more positional approach, where, well, we'll probably end up taking his knight on C3 and trying to damage his pawn structure. I don't know. Let's play bishop B4. I feel like we're playing more positionally in the speedrun. Let's go with bishop B4. I'm expecting A3. That's sort of the instinctual response, and A3 is maybe even the best move in the position. Falkbeer is bad. I mean, the Falkbeer counter gambit is one of the most overrated systems against the King's Gambit. It sounds cool, but it's actually just bad. Bishop D2, good move. Our opponent's playing well. Okay, well, this unpins the knight and it reinforces the attack on E4. It essentially forces us to trade on D3, but now that we've developed most of our pieces, we're fine taking on D3 because we can castle on the next move. And my point is that this pawn on F4 is in the long run going to be a weakness. I think in the short run, it looks good. It looks like, oh, it supports the knight. But in the long run, once white castles kingside, my claim is that this pawn is going to end up causing trouble for white. He's thinking, I mean, bishop takes D3 is what I'm fully expecting. Yeah. Now let's castle. And on the next move, after he castles, we need to deal with the knight on E5. We need to try to trade it ideally. And the way that we do that, as I indicated earlier, is that we go knight B to D7. All right, and this is more important than developing the bishop. So I wouldn't go bishop E6. I would immediately go knight B D7. I would try to address the question of the knight as quickly as possible before he has a chance to fully solidify it. Queen f3. Man, that's another very good move. All right, well, I think that he wants to castle. He wants to castle queenside. He wants to castle queenside. I don't think that really changes what we do, though. Let's go knight bd7. All right, so knight takes d7. Yeah, well, obviously we should take with the bishop because that at least develops a piece. And the other thing about this that is in our favor, yeah, so this is a blunder. And actually, I've seen people blunder like this all the time. Just don't forget that when you castle and you have a queen on f3, your rook and your queen end up on the same diagonal. This is a very common blunder in many different openings. And obviously, it's skewer time. Bishop g4, we win the exchange. That doesn't end the game, but it's a massive material win, and essentially our position is going to be winning after that. Common blunder. I think what people forget is they don't really visualize the position after they castle, and so this move is really easy to overlook. Okay, queen g3. Okay, bishop takes d1. Now the technical stage. How do we convert this advantage? Well, we should try to make priorities, as we always do. What have we not finished? We haven't finished getting our pieces into the game and making surface level improvements. What am I talking about? What move am I implying? What is a low-hanging fruit kind of move that we can play to improve our position? Well, you guys are thinking about moving the queen, but we don't have to move the queen yet. There's 2 bishops on the d file, not 1. When he moves the bishop from d2, then we can move our queen. Don't need to rush to move our queen. Yeah, let's go rook e8. Let's get our rook on an open file. Right, so at this level, right, we're hitting 1400. It's important, as I mentioned last time, to be very concrete. Right? The reason I'm not afraid of anything on the d file is because you can't move 2 bishops at the same time. Just mathematically. So nothing can happen to us as long as he keeps both bishops on this file. Obviously, in my mind, I'm telling myself, okay, the moment this bishop moves, I'm making a mental note to not forget to move my queen. As to where the queen can go, it can go to c7. That's a nice little square. It can go to a5, but it depends on where he moves the bishop. Queen f3. Okay. Well, again, multiple approaches to this position. This is the kind of situation where it's less important the actual move you make and more important, what's the general approach that you're taking to the position. In terms of the general approach, well, we want to trade pieces. That would be great. And there is a move that initiates a bunch of trades. There is a move that is quite obvious. I mean, it's quite straightforward, and it offers, the trade of 1, but probably even 2 minor pieces. Yeah, queen d4 is possible, but that queen could end up getting pretty vulnerable. Yeah, I'm thinking of the move knight d5. Now, what's important about this, knight takes d5, bishop takes d2, check. Rook takes d2. Obviously, we don't want to recapture with the queen because that walks right into the discovery. But we can take with a pawn there, and if we reach that moment, you'll see that we have an even better move than pawn takes d5. Think about what that move might be in the meantime. If white doesn't take on d5, now I think that some of you might be worried about the h7 pawn becoming a weakness, right? You might be worried about queen h5 or queen h3, but those are not worrisome because you can always just play g6. White doesn't have sufficient material on the king side to cause true problems to us. White can threaten checkmate, but you should never just be afraid of a mate threat. All right, knight takes d5. Yes, we're going down that line. Bishop takes d2 check. And after rook takes d2, another lesson in the importance of not playing automatically. Always looking for a better move. Okay, he plays king takes d2. I mean, he probably saw what would happen in the event of rook takes d2, and that is rook e1 check. That forces a rook trade, and then after that, we could play queen takes d5. Now, what should we take with? We can take with either piece. But, in the interest of playing more consecutively, right, we initiated this campaign to trade a bunch of pieces, so I see no point in diverging from our general strategy. This is not going to be the easiest endgame to convert because white is quite well coordinated. We'll have a weak pawn on d5, but we'll make it happen. You can pre-move c takes d5. Okay, queen h3. Well, that makes our job easier. I actually like the fact that the queens are kept on the board. Now, that threatens h7 because pinned pieces protect. Now a question for you guys. h6 or g6? Does it matter? Obviously, both moves are fine, but one move is more accurate than the other. Which one is more accurate? I talked about this previously. When you're making Luft, you got to be very careful about what kind of Luft you make. Anytime there's a bishop on d3, playing h6 often doesn't accomplish the task of making Luft because the bishop controls the h7 square. Therefore, I much prefer to play g6 and just shut down the bishop entirely. Now, am I not worried about weakening my dark squares? Well, what's going to occupy the dark squares? White doesn't have a bishop. Okay, what now? Well, now, again, we have multiple approaches, but we have a queen move that's extremely nasty here. And the way that I found this is I understood that white is probably intending king c1. So some of you, I'm sure, are coming up with the idea of pushing the a-pawn down the board. That's good. But queen a5 is a great move that wins the a-pawn. Oh, queen a5 is even better. I was going to propose queen d4 to hit the f4 pawn and be able to aim for a1. But no, queen a5 check is superior. Okay, queen takes a2 and my headphones died. All right, I'll have to go without them. You won't hear the board sounds, but that's fine. Yeah, so this idea of going a5, a4 is good follow-up. White is trying to make stuff happen. Now, again, even before we go a5, I think it makes sense in this position to bring a piece into the game. Yeah, let's play rook a d8. Let's get this final piece into the action, and that's going to make everything easier. It also creates a hidden tactical threat. As a hint, we are threatening forced checkmate that starts with a quiet but deadly move. Think about what rook a d8 does. And what you should see here is that queen a1 is almost checkmate. Now, under what circumstances would it be checkmate? Well, if the d2 square was controlled. Well, how can we control the d2 square? Well, we can do it with either rook. This rook is almost controlling it. It's just that the bishop on d3 is blocking the rook's control over that square. That's how the move rook e2 comes to mind. But not immediately, because white's going to checkmate us. I mean, we have to recapture. And assuming that he plays a move like queen h6, then rook e2 is possible. Does that make sense? Rook e2 controls that d2 square, forcing bishop takes e2, and then queen a1 is checkmate. It's a nice idea. All right. Not much that white could do. I mean, white can stop that if he's very careful, but that's not going to help the overall position. He's thinking. I don't see a defense yet. G3 allows rook e2. There's another mating sequence here that's also really, really pretty, and it starts with queen a1 check. I'll show that after the game. Why not f takes? Well, f takes is very weakening. I mean, why open this diagonal up for the bishop, right? F takes just needlessly and very significantly weakens the king. Right? In fact, I think f takes loses to bishop c4 check. Or at the very least, it complicates the game. We can pre-move queen a1. That's the funny thing. There's literally nothing that white can do. Okay, good stuff. And we're over 1400. Short but sweet game. Do a quick run through. So you can find other streams where I played c6 here. This is not a novelty. This move has, let's see, thank you pair of trousers for the 13 months. This has about 50 games in the database. But it's tremendously rare. If you want to play something more mainstream, taking the pawn is considered best, according to modern theory. Now, there's many possible lines that you can play. I mean, the King's Gambit is obviously not what it once was. The sort of principled move is g5, but this is extremely theoretical, this line with h4, g4, knight e5. I wouldn't recommend going into this. There's a lot of theory here. The line that I would recommend if you're looking for an alternative to c6 is actually knight e7 here. The point is that after a d4 you go, well, I think you go knight g6, but no, sorry, you go d5 here. You go d5 here. The point of putting the knight on e7 is that if white takes it, you take with a knight, and then the knight can swing to e3. If white goes knight c3, that's the main line. You take on e4, and then you still go knight d5. And you kind of cling to this pawn, and white can eventually win this pawn back, but not without giving up the dark-scored bishop, which is an important piece. So you can investigate this on your own. I'm not going to talk too much about openings in the speedrun. But you can dig around. If you're an e5 player, there's many systems in the King's Gambit. I mean, d5 is also traditionally considered a good system, and the knight f6. Well, the Queen's Gambit is a lot more reputable. But the King's Gambit is also not as bad as people make it out to be. It's not losing, and if black isn't theoretically competent, then the King's Gambit can still produce a lot of good positions. So if you're like a 1500-1600, you can absolutely pick up the King's Gambit and do extremely well with it. John Shaw has a very good book. If you're looking for something on the King's Gambit, John Shaw, he's a Scottish grandmaster. He has a big book on the King's Gambit. And he's a very good analyst. So you can pick up that book, and if you can read it, then you'll be preeminent King's Gambit specialist. I don't know if he analyzes c6 though. Knight f3 is already a mistake, actually. Believe it or not, this is a mistake. You have to play knight c3. The point is that d5 doesn't come with tempo anymore. And here, yeah, d5, e takes d5, e takes f4 transposes to a variation of the Falkbeer, where I think white is supposed to be a tiny bit better, but I'm not sure. Again, you can kind of investigate this on your own. But I do know that knight c3 is the best move. Knight f3, d5, and yeah, the point is e takes d5, you have e4. And then the pawns get connected, and black is better. d3 is decent, yeah, d4, knight e5. And again, if d takes e4, we trade queens, we take on f4. And we're better. And we're better because white has a very weak isolated pawn on e4, and white's got a very awkward king that's lost its castling rights. Knight f6, and we're doing great here. We're doing great here. So knight e5 from that perspective is good. Okay, knight f6, knight c3, and yeah, bishop b4 is what we decided on. E d3 and bishop c5 is the other approach, as I said. Stopping white from castling. I was a little concerned about bishop c4 in this position. Yeah, IKP, I mean, an isolated pawn is an isolated pawn. IQP has its own name just because it occurs so commonly, but at its core, it's just an isolated pawn. Right? Isolated pawns are bad unless there's a very special set of circumstances that make them good. Okay, so we decided on bishop b4, bishop d2. I kind of underestimated this move. It forces us to take castles, queen f3. I mean, he's doing everything right here. And in this position, I already think knight takes d7 is a step in the wrong direction. Common mistake, as I've spoken about many times in the speedrun, releasing the tension unnecessarily. Right? This urge to simplify the position, unnecessary move. There's a pawn on f4, it supports the knight. White can castle long. This is a much more dangerous idea. And here I would have probably gone knight c5 in order to try to get rid of this bishop, because if we play knight e5 and bishop g4, it looks like it wins in exchange, but these kinds of things rarely work. Where should the queen go? Where should the white queen go? I mean, how do you refute this concretely? But this position, the isolated pawn is a moot point because white has a big initiative. Of course you can. I mean, sometimes you need to release the tension, but this was not the moment to do it. Queen g3, correct. Now, if you move the knight, you lose the bishop. If you take on d1, obviously white doesn't take back. White takes on f6, threatens checkmate. You have to recapture, and white takes on d1. Now, technically, 2 pieces for a rook, material is about even, but if you actually look at the position, white has all these pieces, these minors aiming at the king. These types of endgames, in these types of middle games, the minors are much stronger than the rooks. That's kind of intuitively obvious, or should be intuitively obvious. All right. Just a moment. Okay, so it's a complicated position, of course. It's not totally losing. And that's why we probably would not have touched the knight on e5. Probably knight c5. But after bishop c4, I like white's position. White's got this knight. White's got pressure on f7. I feel like white has a great position here. So he played this incredibly well. And he only stumbled here, castles. Now, one other example of a line where this is blundered extremely frequently is actually in the Najdorf. So even GMs have fallen into this in blitz games. So in the Najdorf, the bishop g5 line, there is a line. Okay, so I'm just going to make these moves quickly. It doesn't actually matter. Yeah, so here, this is the theoretical position, and tons of people castle. Tons and tons and tons of people castle. And just walk into bishop g4. So if you click opening explorer, there's like at least 4 games. And the funny thing is, white can try knight d5 here in order to distract this knight from f6, and then you'll take the bishop. And if you take the queen, white takes with check. But why does this fail? And this is really pretty. Black gets lucky here. Black gets very, very lucky here. No, not queen c... Well, yeah, queen c8 is possible. Actually, queen c8. But the better idea is knight takes d5 and then knight e3. Different kind of fork. And you win the exchange. So this is pretty pervasive, and you shouldn't feel too bad about blundering this. And the rest is easy. And rook e8, getting the rook into the game. Queen f3, knight d5. Essentially forcing a mass trade. And now king takes d2 is good, but rook d2 would have allowed us to demonstrate the main idea. Rook e1 check, rook takes d1. And now, of course, with the rook gone, we can play queen takes d5. And we're winning. Yeah, getting out of one fork into another fork. Yeah, g6. Now we pick up the pawn via another fork. The last thing I want to show. So yeah, f takes g6 opens up this diagonal. I mean, anytime you recapture, you just got to consider which diagonals are getting opened. So you could end up getting checkmated here. No need for that. We play h takes g6. Now one more thing here. Instead of rook e2, we have another mating pattern. We can give a check on a1. And now who sees the idea here? This is, I've seen this before. I've actually seen Magnus. I want to say that Magnus checkmated someone like this very, very long ago. I saw a Magnus game where he had a very similar type of geometric construction. Yeah, rook takes d3. Let's see if I can track the game down. If I remember correctly, it's Carlsen against Ernst. Yes, it's Carlsen Ernst. That's right. 2004. Carlsen sacked. This is actually a beautiful game. Okay, so this is a critical position. Carlsen goes nuts here, and it's actually amazing. Boom. Bishop takes h6. What's this follow-up? Boom. Another sacrifice. Knight h6, and now the very quiet move, queen takes e7. Now, white is down a rook at a piece, but black can't really stop checkmate. The only thing black can do is go knight f7, using the knight as a shield. Now Carlsen simply takes on f7, and you can see white's king is safe, but black's king is just subject to this huge attack. King g7. And now the rook, not on h1, but it emerges through the other path. Check, check. And here, Carlsen finds kind of similar mating construction. Check. Now this is a fork. If the king moves to e7, you don't take on g6 and get mated, obviously. You give rook e3 check first. Then you take the rook with check. But rook f6 and queen d7 checkmate. I don't think I've shown this game. So this is like the same kind of construction where I think there's a name for this, where the rooks kind of cover the king. Kind of similar. Not the same lead up, but still. Epaulette mate. I thought it was the epaulette mate. I wasn't sure. And that's all she wrote. Obviously, we went for the nicer mate. Yeah, queen g4. Queen g4, we can still do this. Queen g4, we can still do this. And if king takes d3, whoop, rook d8 check, and we win the rook. No, the biggest mistake... Well, white made 2 big mistakes. The first was knight takes d7, and the second was castles. Really, that's it. It was a good game by our opponent. But, you know, as we reach 1600, we get to a point where 2, 3 big mistakes really do make a big difference. They define the outcome of the game. Okay, guys. I'll see you guys later. Thank you for hanging out. This was a great stream. See you guys soon.